And here we are. All right. Welcome, everyone, to Accuracy in America. I'm Don Irvine, joined once again by Brian McNichol.
Good morning, everyone, and hello, especially to the deplorables, drags, despicables, chumps, Neanderthals, and my good friends, the dog-faced pony soldiers.
That's right. All right. Lots of things to talk about today, but before we get started with the news, I do need, because you are from Louisiana, my wife, during our July 3rd breakfast thing that we were putting together, that just, she decided to make beignets for the first time.
Oh, yeah.
And
it's really good to you.
Yeah. Well,
really good to you.
It's good to know that she's trying to make use of that $200 KitchenAid thing that she bought a couple of years ago. But, the taste test really wasn't for me. I never even got one. All the kids scooped them up, and adults. But the one of the guys that was there at our house on Saturday actually is a native of France, and so he actually gave it the taste test and gave us up. So I figured we're in pretty good shape. If the Frenchman likes it, that's probably okay.
That's right.
And my wife still can't. Yeah, she still can't pronounce it. She makes them now.
That's excellent. That's good for her.
Yeah. So, but she's going to make some today for our missionary friends, and so maybe I'll get a chance to actually have some.
You know what? I'm thinking about becoming a missionary, because it looks like you get to eat at Cafe Rio a lot, and you get beignets. I'm not really seeing the downside.
Well, look, we take good care of it. Look, I was in there yesterday, as because I post those pictures, and there's this guy that hangs around the one in Olney. I don't know who this guy is, but he's there almost every time I'm there in Olney. It's some older guy, and I'm standing there waiting to pay for these sister missionaries, and he just asked me a question. He says, "I saw you before." It's like, who are the people? He says, I know they must be from out of town, but I couldn't read their little name tags and stuff like that. So, I elicited some curiosity by this guy. Because I think part of it too is that he wants to know what's going on in that restaurant,
Right.
And so that one he couldn't figure out. So he had to have the answer.
See, you know what? I'll tell you what, food is love. We disagree, our faiths disagree on certain doctrinal things up and down the line, right? But one thing that all of us agree on, and I think it's not just yours and mine, but, other faiths outside of Christianity altogether, is you got to feed people. Food is love, and that's part of what God wants you to do. And so, when I see that doing it, it's like you're doing a good thing there. That's a good thing.
We enjoy it.
You deserve some credit on that one.
Thanks, Bob. Now it's all I am very blessed. I will say this, by having a wife who happens to be a very good cook, and she has. I think she's really refined the art of holding a party. I will say, though, on Saturday, the one of our guys here, who he kind of threw a monkey wrench into that plan a little bit, because we want to have everything planned. We had set the tables. I had told him, I says, we got room for 27 people set. Now we can take in more, but we set the tables for 27. And so he sends out an email Friday night, unbeknownst to me, and I don't see him until Saturday morning, that says, kind of a reminder that we're doing this event, and there's, just come on out. There's plenty of room at the Irvines. Okay. Which means is that I no longer had a head count. And so, 27 would have easily been enough initially, and even, saying you have a little bit of a cushion, but other people kept showing up that we weren't expecting. So it created a little bit of a massacre, and we can handle it, but it just created we didn't have 30 plates or 35 plates set out and utensils. We had it for 27, and now once we got to number 28, we had to start going okay, where's all the stuff that we put away?
Yeah, that's right.
So I haven't yet wrapped that guy's knuckles to say, if we do this again next year, you are not going to do that again to me.
Send them out earlier. We need,
and that's probably why I didn't get a beignet, because I'm running around trying to make sure everybody had their plates and their forks and their knives.
But that is serious. You need
he denied me. Right? All right. So moving on to July 4th, because July 4th, I think we both are, we're in agreement. This is a wonderful time. We are celebrating our nation's independence. I mean, what can be more American than having this time together? And we're able to do this year after, after 2020, after COVID kind of just ran roughshod through us in 2020. There's a lot of pent-up demand. There's a lot of things that all of us wanted to do as Americans to celebrate July 4th. And then comes the left. Let's start with Cori Bush. She puts out this tweet, and I'm like, what's going on here?
All right, so a few things. One is, for my money, July 4th is America's best holiday. Okay, no presents, no cards, optional if you go to mom's. You can do your own thing there. It's warm. Everybody's wearing comfortable clothes. There's good food that we see in different forms other times of the year, but like the hot dogs off the grill, hamburgers off the grill. That's the day for that, right? And that's a good thing, And it's also a great equalizer in that hot dogs and hamburgers. Almost everybody can come up with that, right? That's not you don't need the money for ribeye steak on the 4th of July. You need the money for hot dogs and hamburgers, And so pretty much everybody can participate in that thing if they want to. Now, what has happened in the last few years is it's the left has gotten reliably ugly about this holiday. They want to, make their little stamp that, this doesn't mean us. It's not for us. We're not free. So I want to go, like you talked about Cori Bush. Okay. So Cori Bush says, we're not free, which I don't know what definition of free we don't fit. And this is on stolen land. And I find that the more interesting critique because, always, one of the things we laughed about over the years is, and I think we've talked about it on here. Okay, you hear this story about how the settlers bought New York for $25 worth of trinkets, right? You're like, oh, we ripped off those Indian or Native Americans, by only paying them $25 for New York. Okay. They didn't own it. So they ripped us off, right? They sold something they didn't own. Okay. So, I mean, that's now a crime. You can now go to jail for that. Now, I'm not trying to get their $25 back, but what I'm saying is, you have to look at what happened here. This was not owned, right? This was claimed, and the only thing backing claims to land in the United States or in this land area before the United States existed was, raw power. Who killed who, right? It was staked out by murderous rampages of one tribe or group against another. Okay. Is that how Cori Bush wants power to change hands in America? It's like you go kill the people in the space you're in and then you own the space, because the people she seems to think had a right to this space that we stole, right? That's how they got it. They killed everybody who was there and drove them out of it. Okay. So when you start saying, okay, we didn't own it, look how they came to own it. Okay. But they didn't really own it, right? They didn't really understand, embrace the concept of ownership as we do. Okay. And the thing about that concept is, yeah, it made a lot of white people rich, but it's made a lot of other people rich too. And that is how we began to acquire and collect property and build wealth. And so what happened is, for the first time in the history of human existence, thanks to what happened in the United States, thanks to people coming and establishing property and chain of ownership of property and so forth, we were able to amass wealth outside of government. Private actors had wealth. Okay, that little happening, that little occurrence has led to, all of modern inventions, all of the conveniences, the ability of me and you to sit in separate states and have a conversation over the phone by looking at our computer, and the people around the world to watch it, right? That happened because people were able to amass wealth outside of government. So, yeah, it was a threat to government. It's a threat to centralized authority, but it's been an absolute blessing for the human race, and you can't ignore that. And so what she's mad about is the thing that put her in the position to actually say those words and for us to actually hear them.
Yeah, I mean, she says too. I mean, she goes into this whole thing before she says, blacks, still aren't free. I mean, what?
How?
Yeah, what does she mean?
Yeah.
I don't get this, but this is that far left kind of attitude towards things, and there's no appreciation whatsoever for this country. She wouldn't be where she is if we weren't a free country.
Right. All these things, and it's true that the founders, when they, set up the country, they set it up. They did not bar slavery. Right. It's true. But they also understood, and it's in the Federalist Papers, right, which is kind of reflects their understanding of what they were doing at the time, that they were setting up the mechanisms for when sensibilities changed about slavery, there would be a way to overthrow it and get it out of the United States. And that's what ended up happening, right? It wouldn't have happened without these guys setting up this system in this way. And yes, they were slave owners, but they set up the system by which their way of making a living would be forced out, declared illegal, nullified.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, to me,
knowingly
yeah,
did that.
right. I mean, to me, it still is this whole thing about where this progressive left crowd, though, they continue to judge, us today based on history from 200 or 250 years ago or whatever. I mean, they continue. They're taking that and they're trying to force us into this, this whole time frame. I mean, you can't. I mean, that's why we're having such a big problem with all these things that are going on here. Is that okay? Yes, look, none of us think slavery was good, but it's a fact. I mean, you can't go and rewrite that now.
Right. And it's not productive. I mean, it's over, and it's been over for a long time, and the downstream effects of it have been over for a long time. It's hard to argue that there's been a lot of systemic, you were actually kept from doing things, racism in this country since the 1950s, especially not since, 1964, right? I mean, it's been illegal, but it's under federal law, and the federal government has proven time and again that it is willing to enforce those laws, right? I don't think any of us were against what happened at Little Rock Central, right? The governor was not going to allow integration. The federal government went over his head and insisted on it and made it happen, right? Sad that it had to come to that. But I mean, when you're talking about being free, how did she get to Congress if she wasn't free? What choices of hers were enjoined if she was able to get to Congress? A lot of people want to be in Congress. It's hard to get there. That's one thing is like people run down AOC, and she certainly said some stuff where she deserved some criticism. But, she got herself elected to Congress at the age of 27 or 28 or whatever it was. You got to give her some credit for that. It's not easy to do. They don't hand those things out. Right.
No, there's a lot of competition. I mean, she's used notoriety to her advantage, and it's not just them too. So I don't know if you saw this thing about National Public Radio. So this popped up, and I thought this was kind of interesting. So for 32 years, they have been reading the Declaration of Independence. Their staff takes turns and reads it on July 4th, but they decided this time around that before they were going to read it, they actually had like a commentary beforehand on their morning edition program, to which they wanted to pick apart the Declaration of Independence a little bit and just sow some seeds of doubt, into that whole thing before reading it. And once again, this is that liberal left mentality. It's like, look. Well, I will never say everything that we've done is perfect. This country, there's things that are flawed. We know that. But once it's still a founding document of our country, and I just
still find an art toward rightness too, right?
Right, yeah, and I just find that they're trying to undermine things, and and they say it takes on a different sound because of the events of last summer. Well, the events of last summer.
In fact, let's talk about that. So, what's the main principle that is established there, right? The individuals are responsible for themselves, right? You do a crime, they can't put me in jail for it, right? If I wasn't there, I didn't know about it. It's not, white guys did this crime. It's Don Irvine did this crime. Leave Brian McNichol alone, right? And that, that's another thing. That's a step that, pluralism demands, right? If we're going to really live with a bunch of people that we don't agree with, look like, come from the same place, and whatnot. It demands that things be assigned individually. Individuals rise and fall. It's not we don't do things as groups. We do things as individuals. The things we're culpable for as a society are individual wrongs. Okay. So, this idea of putting it into, this group guilt, and this group now owes this other group for things that neither one of them were around for, that's a gimmick. That's a ruse, right? That's a con, and if you dumb enough to fall for it, then pay them, right? But I think anybody that puts 10 minutes of thought to this doesn't see it.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I would agree with that. And then obviously conservatives and a lot of other people just were outraged at at some of the things that had been said over the weekend. And you talk about it.
It's every 4th of July now, and like that guy Toure or whatever his name is.
Yeah,
he comes up with he sets that day aside for stupid. I think he starts months in advance planning his stupid for that day.
Yeah, I mean, I think the liberal left has just become more emboldened. They continue to just become louder and louder and louder on this type of a thing. But you're right too in terms of you can't talk about any better holiday, any more American holiday than Independence Day. This is not a secular holiday. I mean, this really this is for everybody. I love watching people wave a flag, wear a flag shirt or do whatever. I mean, people really get excited about the whole idea of July 4th and everything.
You get these community parades, right? You get, every little band in town can get out and march in that parade. What gets us out of our house like that, like the 4th of July does? It's extraordinary. People on the sides of the roads. I went to 2 fireworks displays, one on Saturday night, one on Sunday night, right here by my little neighborhood here in Reston. And just like all of America, we had our cookout, and then we roamed over there and watched that. And the people where I was at, they all look completely different from me. Good. We're all here honoring this thing. We're all on the same page with all this common moment, and no one was asking me did I vote for Biden or Trump, right? It wasn't about that. It was just, we're here celebrating. And it's like, and I even, different people are there celebrating different things, right? That's okay too. Different people pull different things from this, and that's all right too. But the idea that is bad that we say that we went for freedom, which cured the problem. It did not cause the problem. And to criticize that is just, it's reliably sad thing that's going to be happening. You're going to have to put up with it for a while in America, until they lose a lot of elections.
Right. So John Cunningham, I think this is a good comment here. The left has the ability to read the Constitution, but I question their ability to comprehend it.
Yeah.
I think that's really true.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't, because it doesn't fit with groups forcing other groups to do things, right? It says you stand on your own. It's up to you to make your way in America.
Yeah. And I think that would be a good question to ask, some of the liberals too, is that, you can say, have you read the Constitution? A lot of them could probably say yes. But do you understand it? Do you comprehend it? Tell me, give me some. That would probably be a much tougher question for them to answer.
Right.
I think.
Right.
So thank you, John, for those comments. I want to move on here. Supreme Court has ended their session. Interesting session. I mean, pretty good for the conservatives overall. Not slam dunk all the way through, but they had the last couple of decisions were very interesting. I mean, they did the Brnovich and versus the DNC. On the voting rights, the voting law changes in Arizona, and they upheld those changes that they made, and so it didn't violate the Voting Rights Act, which upsets the liberals to no end. And they also had the thing about the revelation, I guess, the publishing of donor names for certain groups and things like that in California.
Was struck down.
Yeah, both
right.
of them.
Yeah, you don't have to reveal. And people need to understand, because it sounds like, you're letting crooked stuff happen. Okay, the case law that governs identifying donors, the title of the case is NAACP v. Alabama. So what do you think was happening there? I mean, I haven't read that case file in a long time, but NAACP, Alabama's trying to get list of donors to the NAACP. This is back in the 50s, early 50s, maybe. So do you think that it's wise do you think they should have been given the donors to the NAACP in Alabama in 1952? Probably not, right? That's probably not good public policy.
Right.
But, for thee, but not for me, right?
Right. Well, I mean, that's the thing, though, is that, I mean, this was not, this is something where the conservatives fought against it. There are a lot of liberal groups that were also fighting against it because this was a can of worms. I really struggle too with California's argument about how they were trying to ferret out, some bad things that were happening with these donors and stuff like that. I mean, I think this might happen, if the people involved in a nonprofit or the organizations have kind of more criminal intent. But the majority of organizations, like this are not. They are very above board, and revealing these donor names could be very damaging to them. So this is a good move.
It's not anybody's business either. What you decide to support, right? It's no one's business. It's the thing about like Trump's organization. Why are we prosecuting? And I would say this if this was the Biden think tank too. Okay, I don't want to. This is not partisan, but why are we prosecuting these people? Why do we care what these little charities do? Because it's not a lot of money, and the money they do have was given to them voluntarily, right? Okay, so if there's a breach of trust, that's between them and their donors, right? So if you're giving to the Trump organization or whatever, Trump Foundation, whatever it was, right? And you look there and say, well, Alan Weisberg gets a new car every 6 months and he's flying around the country having parties, and doesn't really appear to be. Then don't give any more money to that, right? Give money to charities that use your money for what you want it used for. Okay, I mean, there's a lot of them. There's you've been in this business a long time. There's people who rate the charities, how effective, how much do they spend on administrative costs. How much do they waste on, extravagant salaries? How much do they spend helping the people that you're donating to actually help? So, find the ones that are good charities and give to them. Then you won't have a problem with crooked charities, right? Or at least not for long, because, people will see that money's not doing any good and they'll put their money elsewhere. That's what happened to a lot of the Tea Party groups, right? Is that, people saw that it wasn't productive and they moved their giving elsewhere. Conservative movement, we have a grifter problem. I think, you could recognize that, and, we ferret them out and, they're okay for a while and then they lose out unless they're doing something that has value.
Right. I mean, I think both sides of that, it's going to happen on all the way around. I mean, there are going to be, I love it. I love the fact that you brought up grifter. I mean, that's excellent terminology for that, because it's exactly what we've seen, throughout, the nonprofit world, is that there are certain people who, that's all they are. They are grifters, and they are, that they will set up one nonprofit after the other. They get caught with one thing, they'll just shut it down and start another one. And, people, this is one of the things about the American people overall too, is that in general, we're very trusting, of other individuals for the most part. And therefore, if you set up something that sounds like a legitimate charity, you kind of, and you can do a lot of stuff now with the web to make everything look extremely legitimate. American people are very generous. I mean, if you're trying to help someone out and do some good, chances are you can raise some money. And very few, not enough people really try to check this out, because there are so many charities out there. It's really hard to kind of monitor that. But there is some kind of a self-policing mechanism that has to occur and can occur. And you mentioned ratings and things like that. If they pay attention to that, you can kind of sort through that a little bit and say, I can't give to everybody, but I can give to these 10 or 15 or whatever it is.
Right.
And just stick with that. You're fine. I mean, you don't feel like you have to give to everything out there. It's just not,
right.
It's not possible for the average person to do that.
You can't just buy a lot of people dinner at Cafe Rio.
Well, the thing that always got me was, and this goes back about 30 years in time or thereabouts. So AIM had a donor, very nice guy. I lived out in Palm Desert, and I was out there for a California Republican Party convention, and we met up and we had dinner and everything like this. But one of the things, and his name was Frank Newman, very nice guy. He actually came to my hotel room during the convention. This was like, I think we went out to dinner either that night or the next night or whatever. I can't remember exactly what the timing was, but he brought with me one of those composition books, those marble composition books. Yeah. And he used that for his record keeping for his donations. And it was page after page after page. He was basically sending $25 to $50 to tons of organizations because they sounded good. And he wasn't even making he didn't even know how to make a political decision. He was giving to liberal environmental organizations because it sounded good. And he was a pretty good conservative. It's just that, the mailing sounded good, so he sent them the money. Okay. And, I told him, I said, Frank, look, you can't give to all these, I think what you need to do, and I don't know if he ever followed my advice, was that you just need to cut this down because, we stopped by his house and his wife's like, our mailbox has got 50 pieces of mail a day. We can't even, it's hard to go through that because once you're on one list and then you start how much it multiplies. So their mailbox was stuffed with appeals because he just kept giving. So you've got to cut this down. Give more to fewer organizations. You'll be far better off. You make the decision because it's your money. But I told him, I said, some of these organizations, Frank, are not the ones that you would really want to give if you actually went through there and stuff like that. So it happens. But I think it's a good decision. The Arizona decision. It's interesting too because the DOJ had just filed that case. They're filing a suit against Georgia and their laws. Right. And to me, this totally kills them.
Yeah. I think DOJ's casting, right? He's working for Biden. The one thing is they always accuse you of what they are doing, right? And no one has politicized the Justice Department as AG in recent memory like Merrick Garland. I mean, I think he's even worse than Eric Holder at this point. Right? Okay, it's all political. I mean, they've stopped enforcing actual laws, and they're virtually all their effort now is focused on persecuting Republicans. Every initiative they announce is to persecute Republicans. I don't know if you saw, this is not them, but the Capitol Police want to open satellite offices elsewhere in the country. I don't think they have any jurisdiction off the Capitol grounds. I mean, I would just tell the guy to get off my porch. Just like the Biden vaccine people, they're going to be told to get off the porch.
Right, exactly. So that was a perfect segue. This is an incredible thing that Biden has come out and says, since the vaccinations have tailed off, they didn't meet their goal by July 4th. Is that we may have to go door to door.
Yeah, actually go door to door to find out why you haven't been vaccinated. It's like, your question you should be asking is why I haven't pulled the trigger of this shotgun yet.
This is not going to end well.
It's not going to. I mean, you're sending them to people who are not going to be appreciative of that at all. They're inclined against them already. I mean, I think it's very dangerous. I wonder what those jobs are going to pay because you're going to put up with some serious abuse.
Yeah, I understand the general concern, because the vaccinations rates, it was going great guns and it's really dropped off a lot. But there are people who don't want to get vaccinated for whatever reason. That's their decision. I mean, if they right, I mean, they're going to take a risk, and that's up to them. I mean, that means we can take our other precautions if we think that is. I mean, like even the people, we had one guy who came with to the house, and he wasn't a member of our church or anything, right? He was a neighbor of one of the other guys. And one of the first things he says, is he goes, "I'm vaccinated," and we're like, "We're fine." People get a little paranoid about that, but I'm like, no, we're fine. I mean, we wouldn't have held this event unless we felt comfortable about this, figuring that almost everybody showing up was vaccinated, teenagers and children accepted. We knew that was going to be. We weren't worried about their vaccination, whether or not they were or not. So you do that. I mean, I think the concern there now is what the Wall Street Journal's reported is just that this Delta 19, the Delta COVID-19 variant is affecting more the unvaccinated people at this point in time. but I don't know. I mean, I think we're going to see a series of variants. I mean, but I think we're still in pretty good shape overall here in the U.S.
I think the variance is, we're hearing more about that than we probably should. I think it's, we talked about this earlier. You're asking people who've never given up of 1 ounce of government control to give up a lot of control. And so I think the retreat's going to be slow and disorderly, right? They're not going to back off of this without some fights, without some variants and other things to try to put us back under that rubric. I think what'll be interesting is like we get down to flu season, like later on in this year, if they try to reinstitute mask mandates, what'll happen? Because I don't see people, the resistance to mask was reaching fever pitch before they kind of said uncle on that and let it off. So it'll be interesting to see whether people accept that.
Yeah. I mean, what's, back on the mask thing too, in terms of what's the latest from the Catholic Church in terms of vaccinations, masks? I mean, you guys are pretty free now, right?
We can go to church. We can sit anywhere we want. We can sing. We can wish each other a sign of peace, which, it was my church. That was Sunday was the first time we could, there's a point in the mass where it says, the priest says, peace be to all of you. And you say, with your spirit. Then he says, now you can wish peace to all the others. And I know the Catholics on here are cringing because I didn't really get that right. But you greet people. You can, shake hands. We usually hug my family and we wave to some people that are our friends and so forth. But now, that was gone from March until last Sunday, and when the priest said that we could do it. So, that to me, that was the last restriction kind of falling off to the wayside. We still have people who wear masks to church. I played golf the other day behind a guy, may have been the thickest, most protective mask I've ever seen. And this, it's like 85 degrees and this guy's whole face is wrapped up in this hot thing. So, there's still people out there worried about it. I think that, that's another disservice that Fauci et al. Did to us is the mask thing, because there's no evidence that masks stopped anyone, not even a single person, from getting COVID. So, I don't know. I don't think it comes back. I think that we've got the backbone now to stop it.
Yeah, I mean, for us, I mean, our local rules right now are that in our main meeting, which would be the equivalent to mass for you guys, is that we do not have to wear a mask, and we are singing. But we don't actually have our hymnals have not been returned to the pews, but we just use our electronic devices, our phones and our tablets to sing the music from. Our second hour still requires, because it's closer contact of classrooms, for us to wear masks, but that expires on July 18th. So, which is good. But, part of the fear among the leaders is just that Montgomery County, will try to tighten up.
Come in and take you to jail.
Yeah, we won't get, by the time we get to July 18th, we'll be masked up the entire time again anyway. It's like, I'm not seeing quite that yet, but that always kind of, sits in the back of your mind, because Montgomery County is Montgomery County. And it's, any little change, we'll just, the liberals will use that as an excuse to tighten things up. But, those of us have been going to church and have not been wearing masks for a few weeks. If you go to events, I mean, where are all the reports about super spreaders and, spikes and things? They don't exist. Look at all the people going to the baseball games, right? Yeah. I mean, we're not seeing any ill effect from this at all, as far as I can tell.
Yeah. Astros had 26,000 last night on a Tuesday night. So, I mean, people are going to baseball. People are going out in crowds and they're not masked. And I think the fear is past. I really do.
Yeah, I think that's good. All right. So last week, we've been talking about this for a couple of weeks in terms of the New York City primary. Looks like the AP has called it for Adams at 50.5%, and this Garcia came in at 40.5%. So it looks like it's over. That there's that there's enough margin in there that Adams will win. It's not a huge. I'm trying to figure out how to judge this, because the ranked choice voting is so different than people just going out and voting and then maybe having a runoff if nobody gets the 50% and doing this. Because as a part of the thing I understand too is that, as they eliminate people, those votes are now like they're gone too. So the final vote count is really based on the ranked choice of of Adams and Garcia, but really no one else. Anything else, and so whatever the vote total was originally on election night, it's not the same vote total it is now because of ranked choice. They botched a lot of things. Whether it doesn't make ranked choice look good, but it's not necessarily the death knell for ranked choice either.
Well, a few things. One, you said the AP called it. I think the Democrat Party of New York called it. I think they kind of gave up on trying to figure it out and just sort of said it was him.
Our hands.
I mean, it's not impossible. I also think that and so I don't know. I really don't know. I guess he probably won, right? It was well ahead on the first one. He's a cop. He's anti-BLM, anti-rioting, law and order. He's the most law and order of the Democrat candidates. I think New York is getting tired of the crazy and is starting to trying to dial it back in. The two winners were both the law and order candidates, him and Sliwa. So the other thing is for ranked choice voting. I'll never forget. I'm trying to remember what the deal was, but there was, it was maybe 2008, and there was some reason it was a Virginia primary in 2008, and you could vote. Both parties had a primary that day, right? So you could go to the polls and vote like you were voting for president in the primary. So we were trying to game something, and it was to hurt McCain, give someone else a chance. So the smart thing to do and a lot of Republicans in Virginia did it, was to vote for Hillary in the primary, right? So I did it. I talked Lori into do it. So I will never forget, I'm sitting down at the end of this room and she's winding her way through the line to the room, to the polls, right? It is the concept of pulling the lever for Hillary settled upon her, no matter what other advantage it conveyed. I mean, she got sick. I mean, she was crying and felt all bad. It's like, so when you start trying to game stuff, right? There's a reason Virginia goes through these contortions every election cycle, over how to hold the primaries, right? Is because they're trying to keep people from gaming it. So, ranked choice voting, just tell us who you're for, right? And then you start saying, okay, this one's better than that one. Of the people I don't like, I'm ranking the people I don't want. I don't know, I don't think that helped here. I don't know that it's to blame, and I don't know that anybody will be going back, but I think that, people on both sides of the New York mayoral, Adams or the lady, whose name escapes me.
Garcia. I
think Garcia, right. So they're I think both sides have reason to look at that and be a little dissatisfied, especially with that becomes a laughing stock of the nation because the Board of Elections can't figure it out. So I don't know. I think maybe it's not quite there yet. I was more for it till I saw what happened in this election. Now I'm like, I don't know. I think to just one man, one vote.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I did see a comment from someone in Vineyard, Utah, and I guess they use it for some local elections. But those are smaller elections. It's not going to be quite as confusing. Not as many people are going to vote. I think if that's what they chose to do, that's fine on a smaller scale. I think that when they start elevating to something that has hundreds of thousands of votes, that can become more problematic, especially, and you had 13 candidates or whatever it was. I mean, I think those are all part of the mix about why it didn't work well, and just an inept board of elections on top of that.
Right. Right. Yeah, it can't. It's hard to gauge like how much of a problem that was.
Right. So we'll have to wait and see. But in general, I'm not a big fan of this. I think it's like
I think I sort of
I
fell
am
out of love with it over this.
Yeah, I do like one man, one vote, even though we don't have that in the Republican Party in the state of Maryland. So
right. So like I understand that they're trying to gerrymander your last Republican congressman, right?
Yeah. I mean, I was a little surprised in some ways doing it. I thought that was the one thing that we could count on, is having at least the one standing there. It'll be an interesting fight there between the governor and the legislature in terms of how these maps are going to be redrawn. But I do think that in general there is a distaste for just too much gerrymandering from one side or the other. And Maryland has already taken, I mean, they've taken a lot of hits on the gerrymandering they've done before. O'Malley admitted to the, just a blatant, political.
What they did to Roscoe Bartlett, I mean, that tells you all you need to know about Maryland Democrats, right?
Yeah. So I don't know how this is gonna play out, but obviously with the Democrats in trouble for 2022, if they can pick up another seat, that helps them.
Right. So I don't know if you saw this. The Hill had a poll that's 75% of the people who work on Capitol Hill predict that the House and probably the Senate too will change to Republican after 2022.
No, that's not good for the Democrats.
So, well, I mean, what it tells you, that the aides, why would they think that? Because they see, they're seeing the polling and they're seeing how their bosses are acting, and so I think that's a pretty reliable indicator. And I wouldn't be surprised if, I mean, it's beginning to look more and more like they'll take the House, and they're looking better in the Senate with every passing day. Yeah.
Speaking of elections, I bring up Terry McAuliffe and Glenn Youngkin there because I there was some tweet by McAuliffe. I guess Scott Walker called it out. I mean, where McAuliffe about something about buying a gun. Call me crazy or something.
Call me crazy, but it should be easier to vote than to buy a gun.
Right.
That was his thing.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll take you up on it. You're crazy, Terry.
Right.
It's not easier to buy a gun than it is to vote. You don't have to, they don't mail you a gun, right? They don't.
You want to here? We're just giving away free guns.
Yeah, you got to go through a pretty good bit of trouble to get a gun in Virginia or anywhere else, and so and voting is made. You can sign up at the driver's license place, right? The motor voter we have in Virginia. So it was a ridiculous claim, and I was surprised at the width and breadth of the condemnation of it. It's like that was nakedly political and stupid, right? I think even his own side kind of sees that as a own goal.
Well, what it did for me is that I decided that I went ahead to follow McAuliffe's Twitter account, but I spent several minutes just kind of scrolling through his tweets, and I'm like, I don't know. I realize that I am conservative Republican and I'm not in favor of McAuliffe, but I was trying to judge his tweets, and I thought they don't really show a candidate who is really, he's not talking about his record. He is, all his tweets are almost all of them are just disparaging Youngkin, trying to tie him to Trump, and he's really not talking about what will Terry McAuliffe, what is the policy position of Terry McAuliffe on these issues. I saw very little of that. I just saw Youngkin, Trump bashing.
Right. That's right. And his big thing is, we're going to spend, $2.5 billion on education, more on education. It's like, okay, is resources the problem in Virginia education? Maybe at the higher levels, right? But not K-12. I mean, we spend as much as anybody. We get as good a results as anybody. So, the idea that if we just threw a bunch of money and we can fix all this, it's a Democrat solution, but there's no creativity. He doesn't tell you what it's for. It's just lavish a bunch of money on schools, right? What will be improved? How will it be improved? Yeah, and you really don't get that out of him because it's not. I mean, that's the closest he comes to offering a solution on anything. Look, Virginia, has been in bad shape. Has gotten itself into some bad shape. it has like 22 cities that are financially stressed. They've stopped offering vital services because they don't have the money. So, and of those 22, all but one of them has gotten worse since McAuliffe and Ralph Northam were in office, right? So they're not curing it, right? They're raising taxes, they're passing gun laws, they're trying to kill babies after they're born, but they're not focusing on making the state work.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's just, it's just interesting to see how these things are developing. Now, I didn't put it on the list, but this just also, in terms of tweets and some things, I saw this morning. I meant to go into this a little bit more, and I didn't follow through, but maybe have some familiarity with it. And this is Mark Cuban, who apparently sent out a tweet talking about compassion, and in terms of if these employers had kept, like the businesses, the restaurants, et cetera, had kept their employees on the payroll, they wouldn't be facing this shortage of workers now. You need to show a little compassion. I'm like, okay,
they should be paying people who aren't working. You're not even open. You can't sell anything.
Yeah, I mean, you have no Cuban money coming in, and you're supposed to pay these people.
Okay,
how does this work?
People should, right? Exactly. Mark Cuban. People should understand. Mark Cuban had one really good idea. He figured out how to put radio broadcasts on the internet, how to stream radio on the internet, which is a big deal, right? It's not a small thing. And, he has banked that into some serious money. But beyond that one idea, he's a complete buffoon. He's the, most buffoonish owner left in the NBA now, right? And his economics add up to zippy. He doesn't understand the world around him at all, right? But he's got $1 billion, so everybody listens to him. But you cannot pay people if you're not bringing in money. They should have just sat there and took a loss in depth. And when you're starting to make that decision, when you're starting to decide lay off or keep them on the payroll, you have no idea how long this is going to last. How long am I signing up for paying employees who aren't producing a penny for me? Right? How long are we on for that? So, because they don't know, because you didn't know at the start of it how long it was going to last.
Yeah, no, I mean it's difficult, and I have lots of empathy for people who got thrown out of work and faced a lot of hardships. But there's no doubt that the government. I mean, look, the government came in and they did a lot. They did a couple rounds of PPP to help people go through this, but this thing lasted longer than anybody really anticipated. We've had almost endless unemployment benefit extensions with the extra $300 tacked on there. I had a guy at church who lost his job. He's an older guy. He's in his 70s, and I think he was teaching people how to drive trucks or whatever. I think he was doing CDL training, and so the company, I guess, shut down or whatever, and he got thrown out of work, and he gets very little Social Security, so he was in pretty dire straits. And apparently a lot of church members went ahead and pitched in and helped him kind of get through some of the tougher times. And then somebody finally helped him apply for unemployment benefits. And so he actually had some money in his bank. He actually could make his way through that. And then he throws this thing and he says, those unemployment, he says, which are going to be ended by a Republican governor soon, because Hogan said that he wanted to end those. And a judge came in and said, you can't.
Twice now I've stopped
right?
it,
Yeah, and stuff like that. This. Unfortunately, I thought, okay, first of all, you're not supposed to have any politics from our pulpit to begin with. But the second thing is that there was no one to understand the bigger picture of what was going on here. For him, as someone who was basically hand to mouth, paycheck to paycheck, this meant everything in the world to him, and I understand that. But you just can't hand out $300 forever. We have people who are not going back to
and now what they're doing, what the leftists are doing is say, hey, if you give these people a raise, they'll come back to work, right? Well, you're competing against market forces. That's fair, right? Market forces. I figure out how to sell my hamburgers cheaper than you, and they're just as good. You're going to go out of business, right? But they're not competing against market forces. They're not competing against improved production or processes or products from someone else. They're competing against the government paying people to stay home. So, if you want to help business and you want to help those people, pull that $300 and make them go to work.
Yeah.
And someone said, I saw this on the internet. You've probably seen it too. They're like, hey, you want to end this? Give the $300 to the people who went back to work. Hey, here's your bonus from this day. Make things a little easier. You'll get everybody signing up for being back to work then, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you have like here, to put this in perspective, Trump set a record. He had at one point, Trump in 2019, before this started, there were almost 1.8 million jobs in the United States unfilled. We not only had maximum employment and the lowest unemployment ever for Blacks, Hispanics, Asians, minority youth, and lowest in 50 years for women. We had 1.8 million unfilled jobs. We'd never had that before. Today, there are about 9 million unfilled jobs in the United States. So we have 5 times what was the unbelievable record set by Trump with real economic growth, because we're paying people to stay home.
Right. I mean, businesses actually are struggling to operate and earn business owners to earn a living because they can't find the people to fill for them to be able to do and produce the products. So it's and
we're not recovered until those jobs are filled, right?
Right.
Until people come back off the sideline and rejoin the economy as productive people, not welfare recipients.
Right. I mean, I think once we once the rest of the states, once this government program ends, we'll have a much better idea where it goes on. But we have about half the states that want to do so. But this judge that comes in here to stop, Hogan, I'm like, this is, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what I want to do with that. I want to throw something.
Here's another thing about journalism drives me nuts. I read 5 stories on that, on the judges enjoining Hogan from doing this. And I'm no fan of Hogan, but I want to know what was the objection? What did Hogan do wrong? Right? It's not in any of the 5 stories. It's just, Democrats win. That's all there is to it.
Yeah, not surprising. All right, we're down to a couple minutes. Go ahead.
So I wanted to talk about this. The Democrats are doing this Jan 6 committee where, if you could get that, when the idea first started, we talked about this on this show is, I'm not totally against this idea because, I think all the facts come out. It's embarrassing for a lot more people than folks now expect it will be. But, for Nancy Pelosi to be signing all the members, naming the whole committee, and it's all done under auspices of Democrats in control of the House, you're not going to get anything credible. You're going to get something else to fight over and something else to, distract from trying to do something to help the American people, which they've not really found a way to do. People are going to, I think, 50 years from now, I won't be here to see it. I wish I was. You're going to have people like saying, that was the worst speaker we've ever had. Like nothing positive came out of the House when she was in charge. Not a thing. And, now it's kind of hard to tell. But when you compare these people, you talk about insurrection. There's been insurrection on the Democrat side of the House just about for the entirety of her term as speaker. So, I think it'll be another joke. They'll find a couple of Republicans such as, Cheney and Kinzinger to, give it imprimatur, but no one's going to be fooled, because they're not really going to look at, what all happened here. You're never going to see that 14,000 hours of video that they won't let us see, right? Because it shows that cops let people in and Democrats are complicit. And none of that's going to happen, because they want to keep it focused on this. But I am not convinced that 1-6 is a winning issue for them anymore. And I think at some point they're going to figure it out. You'll start to hear less about it. Yeah,
I agree with that. And just, to me, it's like you have Adam Schiff on this committee. It's like, that's all I need to know.
Yeah, it's not going to be honest. I mean, he's a proven liar.
Yeah. So that goes with that. Just a couple of things quickly before we go here is just on Sha'Carri Richardson. She's not going to make the Olympic team.
LSU girl, she should have claimed secondhand smoke. Hey, I was walking around camp. The 9 million people here who smoke dope blew it on me. Sorry.
Look, the thing about it is that she owned up to it, and she was
Yep.
willing to. She understood. It's all these other people that get into this thing, and they're like, it's racism. It's blah, all this. They have to do this. It's like unbelievable. The reaction to this. Or she was fine with it.
She was adult about it. She's like, I messed up. It's against the rules. I'm in trouble.
Right. She was doing that, and then finally, congratulations to the Carters, to Jimmy and Rosalind Carter, 75 years together. You don't get to see a lot of those. Not exactly my favorite president, but I mean, you gotta say, a good Christian man overall, and one who's definitely lived his faith and has had a wonderful marriage for 75 years. So that's more power to him. I mean, he's, what is he, 90, close to 93, 95, something
like that. Yeah.
So good for them. So
I think most people agree. He's a politician, and so there's some venal moments in his past, right?
Yeah.
But not a really great president. Probably one of the worst, but a decent man, a guy who was trying to get it right.
Yeah, I think so. All right, well, thank you for joining again this week. Please, as always, stay safe, stay well. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. Don't forget our independence this past Sunday, and that was a great weekend we had. Hope you enjoyed it as well. And as always, God bless America, and we will see you at our regular day and week.